Great. So let's start this. But before I really go on to this presentation, a few things. Now, a couple of years ago, a young resident approached me while I was giving a presentation. Once I was done with it, I came down. He came down and asked me that what would I have to do to give such a presentation or to be invited. And at that point, I asked him, so what have you been doing? So he said, I'm in my first year of residency. And I said, how many presentations, how many papers have you presented? To which he said, I have yet to start. So basically, to get the point straight, that powering up a PowerPoint presentation is easier, but getting to the podium is a very difficult task. Now, my talk here is essentially going to be about how can you make your PowerPoint better. And basically, the biggest example of somebody who powers up the podium is none other than our president, our prime minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. And of course, he's got charisma to it, but then it is also based upon his years and years of experience as a speaker, right? So, what I believe essentially, and what everyone who's starting to present in PowerPoint, is that good is the enemy of great. And this presentation is essentially going to be your leap from being good to being great, and maybe for some people from being mediocre to being good. And eventually, it is never about beating the competition. It's never about beating the other speakers who are there in the session. It is about getting better every time. And you have to compete against your previous best. So if you've done something well, don't rest on your laurels. You have to get better, and you can. Just like everything else in life, presentations is also science. There is an art to it, which I totally agree with, but essentially it's a science which has three steps. One is the input, second is the process, and third are the results. Now let's look at the input, which is essentially the planning. And the first important thing which everyone has to remember is that what you wear speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say. Now, this is something so important. Fashion may mean different things to different people, that really doesn't matter. But whenever you are going up for a presentation, it may even be a departmental presentation, you can always dress elegantly, dress neatly, dress tidily, and it makes a huge difference. Now, most of us, when we are doing our MBBS, we have found that there is a curve, like there are toppers, then there are most of us who are, the average guys, and then there are people who are the failing students. But luckily, high performers do not follow this bell curve. In fact, there is nothing about statistics which matches high performers, right? It is essentially every time what a champion is made of is when you have a very lucid thought process. Now let's look at the process mind map. Now this is essentially a mind map, and what does this look like to you? It essentially looks very similar to a jumbled up PowerPoint presentation. So what I mean to say is that the presentation is already there in the mind. All you have to do is you have to elucidate it, and you have to put it on paper as well as on the computer. And how do you uncomplicate slideshows? The first thing which you have to do as a beginner before you start making your presentation is that you have to have an extensively written, detailed manuscript of your paper. Very important. Second is that your literature search should be exhaustive, and all your references should be accurate and to the point. The third is that whenever you are doing any sort of a statistical analysis, you should have a comprehensive Excel sheet. When you have a comprehensive Excel sheet, things become very easy. Now, I always believe in color coding Excel sheets. And the advantage of color coding Excel sheets, especially those which are complicated, is that it makes finding data very simple. You can apply all sorts of formulas, you can apply and make tables, and you can construct diagrams as well. Now, the second part of this science is essentially the process or the execution, means how you actually make the PowerPoint. Now, you should always have an attention seeking title. Whenever you have an attention seeking title, the audience will be drawn to it. Then it is up to you to keep them there glued to their seat. For example, Amul per se as a brand, nobody would remember. But the moment the tagline utterly butterly delicious comes, Amul gets associated in the mind. Pictures speak 1,000 words. And whenever we heard the word Mitro, we always remember the picture of our dear Prime Minister. So pictures in your PowerPoints make a huge difference. Now what about choosing your slide templates? Now this is a slide template which is of a very odd kind of a color. And how does it look? It has very loud colors, very different kinds of colors which you need to avoid completely. What about this one? Dull background. Again, not recommended. This one is a very informative slide, but there is a background picture in this slide. And whenever there is a background picture, you cannot really see or concentrate on the front or the back of the slide. So avoid slide templates with dark backgrounds or background pictures. This again is a very beautiful slide, but the problem is there is hardly any place for you to put your words there. So avoid slide templates with built-in designs. What about choosing background and foreground? Now let's look at this example. Now this is a blue background, but it's so hard to read the words because of low contrast and background blend. So avoid low or no contrasts. Look at this slide. These are again contrasting colors and they are very difficult on the eyes, right? And in the same slide, they will actually make the audience a bit irritated when they are sitting and listening. Now look at this presentation. It looks very colorful, but the moment you put your words there, your wordings there, it's going to be impossible for the audience to read. So please avoid distracting colors. Now black is a beautiful background to have. And against black, you can have a yellow, you can have a green, you can have a white, you can have a cyan, or a light blue, you can have a magenta, and it looks beautiful. One big advantage of black backgrounds essentially is when the hall lighting is not to your control. So many a times, if the lights in the hall are not dim, a white background presentation is very difficult to read, but a black background presentation does very well, right? So you have to learn this contrast method or methodology, and essentially it is about a matter of permutation and combination. The next thing is about choosing fonts. Now the standard fonts are the Times New Roman, the Arial, the Calibri, and the Courier. You can also use some alternative fonts like the Baskerville, the Open Sans, the Cantora, or the Ubuntu. Now these are the fonts which are very standard, very visible on the slide, and very easy on the eyes to read. Sometimes there are certain stylish fonts like the League Gothic or the Museo or the Pacifico or the Chunk 5. These are all available on the PowerPoint and you can use them. But artistic fonts have to be kept only for specific slides. The moment you go beyond one slide on an artistic font, it becomes really difficult for the audience to actually read these slides. What about text size? Now, text size is extremely important. You have to have titles which are pretty large, somewhere around 65 to 70, which are easily readable even to the audience who's sitting on the 100th seat. And your text should be so large that it should be visible to anybody and everybody. So title can go up to 96. Title I'm saying is that the title slide, not the title of that slide. The title slide. The author has to be about 48. Your headings can be anywhere between 36 to 50. And your text has to be minimum 24. And this is essentially the dictum of putting your fonts. What about slide layouts? Now try and make as minimalistic slides as possible. I have seen a lot of people trying to put a lot of information on their slides. Now it's good to put information, it is good to give information. But one thing you have to remember that whatever kind of information you're giving on a slide, it is very difficult for people to absorb information from one single slide. Rather than putting so much information on one single slide, either you can put points or you can put graphs or you can put multiple slides, more number of slides and lesser information. That way the audience will take home the point and at the same time they will remember the slides. Otherwise, so much of information on one slide doesn't really work. Font size, again, I would want to specify this, is that don't have more than 3 or 4 sentences on one slide And don't use different kind of fonts. So use fonts which are very easy on the eye, not very artistic, but very simple, but which drive home the point. The reason being that eventually what you have to give is the message. If you're reading a paper, people have to understand what is the crux of the paper. They are not looking at the artistic perspective of the paper. They are eventually looking at what the message is given. So try and make it as simple as possible. The next thing which I will recommend strongly is that you structure your slide. So whatever information you want to give and you want to highlight, try to put it in such a way that it attracts people, it is minimalistic, it is bold, and at the same time it gives the message what you wish to give. Right? So this slide you can correctly see that there is a flash bulb. So if I were to give the conclusions of a particular paper which I am reading out or a presentation I am making, I would rather have this kind of arrangement than actually put the points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and write sentences. And this would make the life so simple. One thing you have to remember is that there are sometimes even judges, like if you're presenting your paper in one of the competitive sessions, then you have to remember that there are judges who are going to actually mark your paper. And this is where there is going to be a difference between your presentation and the presentation of others. Because there is specific marking for specific points. There is marking for content as well, but there is marking for aesthetics. And what does aesthetics mean? That how clearly you can actually give away your message. So again, very important to structure your slides. What about inserting media? Now, a few things which I would want to speak on. The first thing here you have to do and be very careful is try and avoid disclosing identity of the patients. This X-ray, you can see the identity of this patient is clearly seen, which is not right. So please be certain that whenever you're putting up the X-ray of a patient or you're putting the clinical photo of a patient, cover the face of the patient, cover the private parts of the patient, and also never disclose the identity of a patient. The second thing is that you have to avoid these background objects, right? So as you can see, there is a phone which can clearly be seen in the background of the picture. So what you can do is, one is either you can actually put the X-ray, turn it around and put the kind of matte side down so that there is no reflection. Try and not have too many tube lights around the viewing box, and try and take a picture from a distance or from an angle where your phone is not getting reflected. Again, extremely important when you're using your presentations. Cropping pictures is very important. I have seen a lot of presentations which come like this. Now the part of the viewing box and the clips of the viewing box are very clearly visible. Now here it is very important that you crop the pictures, and this can be done in PowerPoint itself. So PowerPoint per se is such a strong and such a powerful tool that you can do a lot of editing within PowerPoint, and you can crop this picture, make it smaller and put it, and this looks so much more better than a picture which was I had put previously. The next thing which again people make mistakes is about the optimal brightness and contrast. And here also PowerPoint comes to your advantage. PowerPoint has got all the necessary tools with which you can adjust the color, the hue, the brightness, the contrast, everything. All you need to do is you have to sit with your PowerPoint for a couple of hours, try and see all the controls, try and see what all you can do, and it is quite easy. So it's basically a self-learning experience. Of course, there are other various workshops which happen which you can attend, but this is also a self-learning experience. So whatever workshop you attend, unless you do it on your own, hands-on, things will not work. Brightness and contrast adjustments, again, very simple. You have to format the picture, sharpness, brightness, contrast, saturation, temperature. Everything can be adjusted in PowerPoint. You don't have to go to any picture editor. Now, coming to videos. Videos again are usually a problem to run. Many a times your videos do not open in your presentation, and that is a question which all of us are asked on a regular basis as to how can I see that my video works. So a few tricks and tips which I can give. One is that whenever you're using a PowerPoint presentation and whenever you have inserted videos, see to it that you save the PowerPoint in the form of a PPTX file and not a PPT file. This is the first thing. The second thing which you can do and which you should do is that if you're carrying your presentation, please carry your video files along with you and keep them in one single folder. Also, one trick which I recommend to people, especially those who are doing arthroscopy, is that you try and keep your videos in this on the same computer, opened but minimized. In case it does not run from your PowerPoint, you can always maximize the video window pane and you can play the videos, right? In uh, the keynote presentation, if you save a keynote, the video is usually played, unless there is a problem somewhere in the computer from which you're playing it. So usually keynote is not much of a problem. Again, one recommendation strongly is try and put all your videos in MP4 format. It is a universal format and it plays most of the movies. So MP4 videos are extremely likely that they will play, but many other types and formats of videos do not really play. So again, extremely important to keep your videos formatted. So Keynote usually takes any QuickTime or iTunes or MOV, MP3, MPEG-4, ACC, but MP4 is the best. The next thing is about inserting graphs. Now this is very, very important. Now look at this graph. It's a very nice looking graph, lot of information there, but too much of data. And when there is too much of data on this graph, it is very difficult for the audience to understand. Yes, you have done the study, you will understand that this graph has got that data, but the audience has to understand. So make very simple graphs. The second thing which people do is that they put too many annotations on the graphs. Now look at this graph. There are so many annotations, so many legends around. There is nothing you can understand out of this graph, right? Specifically for an audience who's sitting there and watching your slide only for about 2 to 3 seconds or even 5 seconds. Try and make charts which are representative with bright contrasting colors. May they be simple, may they be colorful, may they be bright, but most importantly, may they be representative, because this is so easy and simple for the audience to understand. Interactive graphs are available in Keynote. Unfortunately, I am playing this on PowerPoint, so I'll not be able to show you. But interactive graphs on Keynotes can be moved. So these are graphs which actually have animation built into them, and you can move these graphs up and down based upon the data and the changes in data. And probably if I had a Keynote, I would show it to you. Now that was the second part about making your PowerPoint. Now the third and most important part, you have done the hard work, you have made the PowerPoint. Now it is the time to deliver. And this is where most of the people flounder, right? And the reason for that are multiple, but the easiest way to actually go about it is by knowing the 3 Ks of presentation. And the 3 Ks are, you have to know what objective you have to understand what audience you're speaking to, and the third thing is your key message as to what message you want to give. Objective can be winning a prize or a medal. It can also be trying to wow your audience, or it can be to establish your credentials as an academician. When you're presenting in a prize or a medal winning paper, always finish your presentation on time. Lesser slides, lesser matter on slides, very important. Underline, highlight important points. Flawless working videos, check, counter check, recheck again and again and again. Representative simple charts, only one per slide, not more. Clear conclusions and relevance should be defined extremely clearly. Once you have these points and you have a clear take home message, it is very likely that you have done well. Now the second way is basically when you do a presentation is to wow your audience. Seamless talk without breaks or confusion, very important, which you will learn with time. Judicious use of slide transitions and animations. Do not animate each and every slide, but use this judiciously. It's a beautiful tool. Using pictures, diagrams, and self-explanatory charts, extremely important. Eye contact with the audience, again, extremely important. If you can establish and make eye contact, nothing like it. Asking the correct questions even in your slides and seeking a consensus if possible. So if it is a raise of hands or if it is a multiple choice question, but if you're involved with your audience, there is a very high chance that you're going to wow your audience. The third thing is to establish your credentials as an academician, and this is specifically for the residents who are watching. Please present original work. So don't take your thesis topic from your friend and present that, or don't ask your friend to put your name there. It doesn't really add to your credentials at all. Speak with command and authority, but please don't be arrogant. Very important. You have to preempt and think what questions are going to come and have answers prepared to them. What the questions the audience may ask me. Be thoroughly updated with literature because you're going to be asked questions on that. Answer on questions asked should be very, very precise, and please avoid tangential answers because that will irritate the judges and the audience. And each time you present, raise the bar of your talks sequentially. Try and improve. Even if you've done well, don't rest on your laurels. Try and improve. Right? So, presentation, like an art, is essentially a science. There is an input, there is a process, and there is a result. And believe me, if your input is right and if your process is thoughtful and meticulous, you will always have a good result. But one thing you have to remember, whichever presentation, wherever you're speaking, if you're speaking to an audience of 220, 200, 2000, or 20,000, is that you have to put your heart, mind, and soul into it. Only then will your result matter. Thank you very much.